Hey guys, this is Scotty, and today I just want to talk a little bit about some of the details and steps involved with just applying to med school and basically how I got in, which I think it's important to know that you don't have to be a lot of the things that people think you have to be to get into medical school. And that was a really interesting process for me because I thought that you had to be the best student that you knew in every category and that you had to start really, really young if you ever wanted to get into med school and be a doctor. And it's just not the case. So, uh, just to go over my stats really briefly, I can tell you that that definitely wasn't me. That I didn't even decide I wanted to go to med school until I was like 26 after I had a couple knee surgeries. And I didn't take school very seriously up until that point. But ultimately, I not only did I get in and now I'm actually a medical student, but I got a ton of interview invites. I actually stopped going to them because they got kind of monotonous and I found out I'd been accepted to a place that I really liked, which is where I'm going now. So, um, just to pull it up really quick, this is my academic journey from here. We got the fall of '08 and '09 all the way up until the fall of 21, 22. So that's a bit of time. And if you're doing the math on that, like, wow, you were in college in '08 and '09? Yes, I was very young. I started going to junior college when I was 15 or 16. So I'm 32 now, no secrets about that. But yeah, as you can see here, I think it's saying that I had like a 2.0, because this is like my cumulative GPA, which is weird because I actually thought that I got like B's in my early, like my very first courses in junior college. But basically, I was like just kind of trucking along all the way up until like 2012. And then we fell off a cliff. And that was about 2 years before I discovered, or like a year maybe before I discovered mixed martial arts. So things kind of became not very, school was not very interesting to me at that time. So I did basically fall off a cliff, and then I came back. And then, so starting in 2013, I decided I wanted to go back to undergrad. And so I was a little bit older than a lot of the incoming freshmen. I had like a few units that could transfer, but basically I went to a place called Simpson University. It's in my hometown, and I started out as a business major. And I don't know, I changed my major a bunch. I changed my major a bunch here, so things were like all over the place. But I was definitely taking school more seriously, as you can see by this green line here. But I didn't take any science courses, and I didn't take any science courses until, as you can see, there's like this orange line. This is like my last science class. I think I took something like psychology or something. And then I didn't take anything again until fall of 16, 17. So that just goes to show how that was right around the time I decided to go to med school. So like I said, I had some knee surgeries, and I got bit by the bug. It just piqued my interest. And from that point on, I realized, oh my gosh, I have to get myself ready. And my overall GPA was like, it was more over here. It was in the sub 2.0 range, I think. Actually, maybe by the time I took the science courses, I'd done a little bit of work. So I was like a 3.0-ish overall, but I had a lot of baggage. And so fortunately, there's a lot of schools out there that this is what they look at when they look at your GPA and what kind of a student you are. They actually see like what the trends are. And so they're looking especially at how you've done like more recently, like in the last 2 years, or maybe even like the last 3 years or 4 years. And I guess that's anecdotal, but it's something that comes up a lot. If you look into it, you'll find a lot of med school admissions people talk about how your most recent performance is what they're most interested in, but they are paying attention to everything. So that's kind of what it looked like for me. And it just goes to show that you can completely screw up and fall off a cliff and still, if you're patient and you're diligent, you can climb out of a hole for sure. And that's exactly what happened here. So I started taking, I only took like 1 or 2, maybe 3 science classes at the most because I was working part-time. And but I got it done, and I worked as a science tutor. I basically finished my business degree, and then the units at like the 4-year university were too expensive, so I went back to junior college, which was across the street. And I took a couple science courses, and I was qualified to be a tutor, and then I got paid to basically study better and teach a little bit, which actually helps you learn. And I knocked out a bunch of prerequisites like that. And then right before I moved to San Diego in 2020, I only needed like a few more units. And so that whole side of the story is like separate. That's in one of the podcast episodes that me and Rayhan did. But I just wanted to take a little bit closer look at what my academic profile looked like. So as you can see here, so according to AMCAS, my overall GPA was 3.14 and my science GPA was 3.18. There were like 4 or 5 classes, like science classes and stuff that I retook to raise that. But ultimately I put together like a solid 2-3 years of like 3.7 and above grades. And they were all prerequisites. And that was a lot more reflective of my interest in medicine. And then I added in a bunch of work experience that was all in the medical field, a lot of volunteer experience. And that got looked at really favorably. So obviously it worked. And I know a bunch of people that are much smarter than me, that have much better grades than me. And they're worried about where are they going to get in? Are they going to get in at all? And the only thing I can really tell you is you're totally qualified. If you're doing better than me here, you're totally qualified. As long as you didn't like fail classes like in the last year, or your slope is looking on the downhill right before you apply. That's not good. But there's a couple more things that go into it. So we'll go down here. We'll go to med schools. So by the way, this is mapped.com. And they really, really help organize all of the insane amount of information that goes into applying to med school. They're just super, super helpful. It's like about the cost of a Netflix membership, maybe a little less per month. And you can keep track of your GPA, all your prerequisites, all of your volunteer hours, community service, medical experiences. And they have little places where you can like write notes. And they also have a really slick system for acquiring and saving letters of recommendation. So they're not paying me to say that. I totally used them. They organized everything. It was very well done. And the customer service was responsive because it got a little tricky with getting the letters of recommendation because not everybody who's old enough to be writing those understands technology very well. So they were super helpful and we definitely got it done. They save your letters of recommendation on their own server, and then you can send them to as many schools as you want. And so they're compatible with AMCAS and ACOMAS and Texas med school applications. So it's just pretty cool. So as you can see, my med school's up here. We've got 44. I think I applied to like 50 because I think there might have been some new med schools at the time that weren't on here. But basically, they put together a pretty decent profile for every school in the country, and they keep track of the prerequisites, they keep track of the most recent admissions essays, and they give you a few stats about the school, and you can do all that work and write a lot of your essays like straight from here. I still recommend double checking it because sometimes schools change things and maybe you know, Maps didn't get the memo, but it helps a lot to keep track of everything because at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. If you've got a 3% chance at getting into any given school that you're applying to, you want to apply to a whole bunch because those are really tight odds. They're not in your favor. So, I think a lot of other people talk about this, but it's like you want to be aiming for schools that you understand what their incoming class stats are in terms of like GPA and MCAT, and then what your stats are. So one thing that I didn't go into here was my MCAT. So my first MCAT was 499, and I was so bummed because I'd been scoring significantly higher than that, and I knew that I couldn't apply with a 499 because looking at my GPA, I was like really hoping that MCAT was going to be the thing that, put me above the pack, at least for a couple dozen of the schools that I was going to be applying to. So I had to retake it. And even though I did really good studying that time, I took it again like 11 months later, and then I got a 503. And I was like, dang, that is, again, not where I was testing at. And I did everything right. I used all the practice tests the way you're supposed to, and they were timed. Everything was done well. I tapered. I treated it like a training camp. And I actually had an easy test on the second one. And I think it was because it was easy for everybody. That's where the curve put us. So anyways, I rolled with what I had. And the amazing thing is, so the light at the end of the tunnel is even with it like below average, like, several notches below average in almost every department, I was able to get interviews to like 20 medical schools. I did apply to like a little more than 44, but I stopped counting at like 20 med schools, and that was pretty impressive. So I never even applied to any Caribbean med schools. I only applied to American schools. I think I only applied to like 2 or 3 MD schools just because I wanted to use my money wisely, and they definitely do have stiffer competition. But just applying to DO schools ended up being a really good fit for me because of a lot of the things that I've learned about medicine and the worldview that I have and what medicine ought to be and how I try to apply what I learned about medicine already. DO was definitely the way to go. But realistically, I did not apply to like 50 or 60 MD schools. And maybe there's like more detail and nuance that goes into a strategy like that. But again, it all comes down to your numbers. So DO schools were not as much of a reach because, at least to my knowledge, and maybe there's MD schools that do this, the DO schools really care about your medical experience and your most recent performance. And so that played into my hands pretty well because what's not listed here is I have a ton of activities. And let's see if we have any listing of them. Well, we got some of them. I'm not sure how many of them ended up making it into here, but 2,796 hours. Yeah, I'm not even sure. Yeah, I put jiu-jitsu in there. Yeah, did a bunch of stuff. So, like volunteered. I did some awesome like overseas medical humanitarian work with the Free Burma Rangers, which is I could talk for hours about that. Maybe someday we'll be able to interview someone from over there because they have a lot of amazing medical professionals and other incredible former military people that are over there doing frontline humanitarian work in a really dangerous part of the world, and it's incredible and amazing. So that's notable because it ended up being a really significant backbone to the narrative that I wrote. And that brings me to the final detail about how I think I got into medical school, which is writing. Really, really strong writing skills and really, really, really great editing. So I knew that my writing was pretty good. But the thing about writing and good writers is like great writers are not born, they're edited. And you are going to be writing some really, really important documents and answers and essays when you're applying to med school. It's extremely important that you um, work with somebody who knows what they're doing. So I'm going to switch out of this screen view and we'll wrap up that little bit. So yeah, use an editor. And a good editor is someone that understands med school admissions. Writing for med school applications is unlike any other kind of writing out there. You almost always have a very limiting word count. It's usually a character count, and they're looking for answers to very specific questions. And it's really, really hard to summarize your tremendous efforts and the years of hard work that you've put in to get to that point in the character count that they give you. And that's what makes it challenging to stay on script, which is why having a good editor is so important. So there's a lot of editing and med school application coaching companies out there that offer services specifically for applying to med school. And I recommend that you work with one at least a little bit. And some of the packages that they have are crazy expensive, and they'll even guarantee you admission to a medical school in the United States if you are willing to spend like the $12,000 that they have. I didn't have that, but I did have enough to get some help with some of the editing. And the advantage to applying to so many DO schools, or just a lot of schools in general, is you only have to write maybe 10, 12 essays. And a lot of the questions that a lot of those schools ask are going to be very, very similar. And so you're going to have sort of maybe 8 to 12 sort of master essays. And then you are going to take little pieces of those and you are going to put them together and repackage them and make sure that you have the school's name correctly entered into that essay somewhere, and you don't mention another school, and you basically repackage what you have. But making sure that that initial set of essays is super pristine, including your personal statement, which is going to go to all of them. That essay and that document is of the utmost importance. So I think I can upload mine at some point. It might be a good thing to do. But we'll have to save that for a later date, because I'm trying to figure out why I don't see so many of them hosted online. And I don't want to get my writing poached either, which would be hard to do, because if you haven't had my life, you haven't had my experiences. So but at any rate, yeah. So editing is great. The company that I used was Shemasian Academic Consulting, and I obviously have good things to say about them because the help that I got there worked. So the only thing, they're not paying me to say that. The only thing that they did was help me get into medical school. They were super professional. Like incredibly so. So they pair you with a current medical, well, they don't pair you with medical. Sometimes they pair you with medical students. Sometimes they'll pair you with someone who is a very recent medical student, but they also have a supervisor above that person. And everybody that you work with has worked in med school admissions, including your student or doctor advisor. They pick those people from med school admission boards. So a lot of these people, like if they're a student, if they're like a current student, and that's who's been assigned to you, it's someone who was a great applicant and could probably tutor the MCAT, but they also have worked or served on a med school admissions board, like as a student member. And from that perspective, they know quite a bit about med school admissions. So later, I haven't been invited to do this yet, but maybe I get the opportunity to help screen applicants and select people. I would probably do it, even though I'm really picky about how I spend my time, because I think it's very, very important. And I still think that it's got to be the hardest part of the journey. At least I think it was for me, because even though med school is hard right now, the weight and just all of the pressure to get accepted was so high for so many years, because it did take me a long time to get in. That I think that is for some people, that is going to be the hardest part of the journey. You know, mileage may vary. You can have terrible things happen to you while you're in med school that make it much harder, but hopefully that doesn't happen. And yeah, so that's basically a wrap. So to sum it all up, yeah, 3.14 total GPA with a 3.18. Maybe a Comus that got like a 3.29 GPA in sciences, and a 503 MCAT. I was able to get accepted to med school, and I really believe that there's a lot more people that could do it if I was able to. So maybe that's you, and I hope you see this.